Well, good morning, everybody out there in internet land. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. How's everybody doing this morning? It is a great Saturday morning to be alive, is it not? Hang on. Gotta fix stuff here. There we go. That's better. Instead of blasting everybody out. Oh, man. It is so good to see everybody. Welcome once again to Front Porch Brunch. We are glad to have you here. Just checking a few things on my side of the fence. Making sure that all my audios and videos...
Brunch, we are glad to have you here.
Okay, and we appear to be working on Rumble. Let me check there real quick. Yep, we are working on Rumble. Yep, all right. Let's get down to it. Woo! How is everybody out there in internet land? What? You told me you weren't going to be able to make it. But alas, here I am. And Millicent, my awesome Australian, I am so glad to have you in the audience this morning. Mwah! Darling, it's so good to see you. You are absolutely beautiful and as Camelot might say, you're goated and all that glorious stuff. You are awesome. Mwah! Thank you for being here. We're going to give it a minute or two for everybody to get in. Again, my name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Welcome once again to Front Porch Brunch, a live stream that is dedicated to helping you, the hardworking individual out there in the world, find out what's going on in the news, keeping up with everything, and trying to make sense of it all. Yeah, honey, that was me last weekend. Oh, good morning, Miss Leanne. My love. Mwah, 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 mwah. Glad to have you here. We're giving it a minute or two before everybody starts rolling in here. So, yes, great to see everybody. I hope everybody here in America had a wonderful 4th of July week or weekend, depending on what you were doing. I know Miss Leanne was out on the boat, out on the Potomac, enjoying life on the waves and the water, and happy for you to do it. I know that Miss Millicent was keeping warm down in Australia this time of the year. So, yeah, it's great. I don't know about anybody else, but holiday weeks tend to screw me up. And here's what I'm getting at. And don't get me wrong, anytime that a holiday rolls around, depending on what it is, I will celebrate it. I will embrace it. I am here for it. I enjoy it. But, man, if the day happens to fall in the middle of the week, it just really screws up my internal clock. Okay, because, I mean, let's be honest. I'm wired that, like, okay, it's Monday morning. I got to get up. I got to go to work. It's Friday afternoon. Okay, my week is done. If I've got time off during that week and then go back to work, it just, I mean, I was at the gym the other morning. I thought, man, this feels like Monday. It was just really weird. It really was. But yeah, my 4th of July was fantastic. I mean, just speaking for myself, you know, I got work done around the house, did things, and spent time with my family, and it was just a wonderful time. And you know, some of the things we talked about last Saturday are things that I put into videos, like the reading of Rush Limbaugh Jr., Rush's dad, his speech about the founding fathers. That was a wonderful experience for me, and I just enjoyed it very, very. Yeah, exactly, Millicent. I agree. It just throws the whole week off. But yeah, I had a wonderful week of videos, had a wonderful week of news, and a lot of things to talk about this morning. I was really worried that going into this live stream that I wasn't going to have enough to be able to talk about. And then all of a sudden, you know, the news gods dropped all this stuff in my lap, and I'm like, ooh, okay, we got things to talk about. And boy, yeah, I mean, and Leanne's saying the same thing. Did not know yesterday was not a Thursday until 4 o'clock when everybody back in the office as we close on 4 on Friday. Yeah, tell me about it. But, yeah, I mean, wonderful week. And, you know, we had our nation's celebration of our nation's independence. We had chance to spend time with our families, enjoy some beer that's not named Bud Light, and otherwise just enjoy being Americans. And I agree with the general sentiment about the month of July. I think this should be American Pride Month. Okay? If we can have Pride Month for the gays and lesbians in June, why can't we have a whole month dedicated to American Pride in the month of July? I am down for that idea. So, put some flags out, tell people you love America, piss off a liberal, whatever you feel like you need to do to display American pride, just go for it. That's my thought on the whole matter. So this is Front Porch Brunch. For those of you who may be watching either by way of YouTube or Rumble or Twitter, as always, let me basically set the table for what this live stream is all about. I recognize, and I think everyone does, that we are extremely busy in our individual lives, and we're out there trying to make a living. We're working God knows how many hours every week. We're trying to satisfy our spouse or our partner or our boss or our kids, or our in-laws, our outlaws, whatever it may be. And you've got to get worn down to a frazzle. And in doing all that, who really has time to look at what's going on in the headlines other than just maybe reading a brief headline and going, oh, okay, I'll catch up with that later. But you never get the chance to do it. Well, hence, that is where your friendly front porch conservative comes into play. I am all about sitting around talking about the news. I love running my fingers through the news. I love to analyze it, talk about it, think about it, and try to figure out what it all means and all that good stuff. So it's that's part of what we're here to do. Not only just talk about the news, but talk about what it means, what we think about it. And we're going to do it in a friendly, non-confrontational, fun sort of way. I encourage you to chime in with comments. Please don't be out there, a stranger. We love people. We love this little community we're building, and I am happy to see everybody come to my electronic front porch and hang out. Pour yourself a cup of whatever it is you may have, and just otherwise, hang out with us for a couple hours every Saturday morning. And, I try to do this in such a way that, it doesn't interfere with, what you're going to be doing, because odds are the morning you're like unwinding from the week. You're making sure the kids have got breakfast. Maybe you're having breakfast. Maybe you're pouring yourself your first cup of coffee. Maybe you're reading your newspaper. Whatever it is, I want to time this such that, you get to enjoy your Saturday. And, hopefully you can enjoy it by spending part of it with us. Now, we are not monetized on YouTube. However, if you feel like leaving a Rumble rant, I will not object to that, as it will always go for the Fedora Fund. So if you have some extra coin and you feel like sparing it, please feel free to drop it in. And again, don't do anything that puts you in an economic bind. I don't want anybody doing anything that does not benefit them or their families. But if you feel generous and you feel like dropping in some coin, well, I won't object too much. So yeah, well, it might not be breakfast. It might be late night pizza. Yeah, I get you. I'm down with that. There is nothing. There have been some Saturday mornings that are just cold pizza and maybe a brewski. But if I'm drinking beer that early in the morning, I got problems. So who knows? All right. Having set the table, let's get into a discussion of about 3 or 4 different things. Some of them I've touched on in videos this week, and some of them I have not, because they've just really happened in the past 24 to 48 hours. But they're definitely newsworthy items. So the first one I want, and this one to me is maybe the best thing that has happened from a courtroom in a hell of a long time. And I touched on this in a video I did earlier in the week. This is from the Epoch Times. Judge delivers major blow to Biden administration in social media censorship case. Now, I kind of want to back this up a little bit. And for those of you who may not know what's going on, and you may have heard about this on the edges and you haven't really dived into it real deep, let me back it up and see if I can help you out here. A lot of people for the longest time have had this strong suspicion that whenever they would post something, be it on Twitter or on YouTube or Facebook, various other social media venues, okay, that the reach of their posts was either being, for lack of a better term, throttled, or it was just out and out being banned. And I'll give you a real life example of this. A lot of you know, if you are regular devotees of my videos or my live streams, that I am a very enthusiastic follower of the work of a gentleman named Richard Barris, aka the People's Pundit. He is a pollster, and probably I'd argue one of the best pollsters in America. If for no other reason aside from the accuracy of his work, is that he will show you the ins and outs of polling. And if you are a numbers nerd, like I can occasionally be, that sort of thing is groovy. Because I want somebody to explain to me why a poll is good or why a poll is bad or why it's not accurately reflecting what it should. Well, Barris has this live stream he does called Inside the Numbers. And this was back in 2020, I remember correctly. He was having a discussion where he was quoting from an article as it related to COVID-19. Now, he wasn't expressing an opinion about it, although he has them. He was just simply quoting the article. That's all he was doing. Right in the middle of his live stream, that baby was taken down. YouTube took him down. Now, he already had an appearance lined up, on another live stream hosted by Eric Hunley at the time. And he went on there to talk about it. He was on there with Allison Morrow, a few other journalists. And he said, I don't know what happened. I was right in the middle of my live stream, and it just went down. And he said, now I have a feeling it was the subject matter. And that's just one example of it. I mean, there are hundreds of individuals, Megan Fox being one of the most recent examples, where, she was making some commentary about the previous month in which we found ourselves, and her channel got demonetized. So there's been the longest suspicion among conservatives, libertarians, free speech advocates, etc., that something's been amiss, but no one could quite prove it. Well, enter Elon. Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely, Millicent. Absolutely. Enter Elon Musk, who bought Twitter, took it private, and he engaged a couple of journalists, one by the name of Matt Taibbi, another named Michael Schellenberger, to go into the internal communications at Twitter and report what you find. Well, the upshot of what they did came to be known as the Twitter files. And they wrote article after article after article documenting evidence of censorship or collusion to censor between the executive branch of the government of the United States and Twitter. And apparently this was going on other places as well. Now, how this relates back to this judge's decision. Rounds about the same time as all that was going on, the attorney generals for the state of Missouri and the state of Louisiana brought suit in a district court alleging exactly what Taibbi and Schellenberger found with the Twitter files, alleging censorship, mostly in the context of discussing COVID-19. So the case got filed, if I remember correctly, back in 2022, early 2022. And this previous March, a motion was made to dismiss the whole case. The government of the United States went in front of the judge, a gentleman named Terry Doughty, and said, we want the case dismissed. This thing does not have merit. The judge did something very surprising back in March. He said, no, we're not dismissing the case. Your motion is denied. And furthermore, I am ruling that you're going to go forward to discovery. Now, discovery is basically that point at which lawyers can start issuing subpoenas and requests for documentation. The attorney generals start sending them out to Twitter, to Facebook, to YouTube, to everybody. Okay? And that leads us to a ruling handed down, interestingly enough, on the 4th of July. The judge, and this is what the article from the Epoch Times deals with, told the Biden administration, you can only talk to social media companies except, let me rephrase that. You can only talk to them under limited circumstances. Now, I'm going to pull up his ruling, his order that he gave, and I'm going to show you the circumstances under which the government can talk to a social media company, okay? Because everybody on the left is just all up in arms about this. They can't believe this judge ordered something like this. They call it broad and sweeping, and just they can't believe that this judge is engaging in such activism. I'm going to give you my opinion about all that in a minute, but I want to show you the things that, let me rephrase it, when the government is allowed to talk to a social media company. Take a look at this. You blow this up. Hey, good night. How you doing, brother? Glad to have you here this morning. Now, this is from the judge's order that was handed down July 4th. It is further ordered that the following actions are not prohibited by this preliminary injunction. Number one, informing, this is what the government informing social media companies of postings involving criminal activity, okay, or criminal conspiracy. Number two, government contacting and or notifying social media companies of national security threats, extortion, or threats posted on its platform. Number three, government contacting and or notifying social media companies about criminal efforts to suppress voting, to provide illegal campaign contributions, of cyber attacks against election infrastructure, or foreign attempts to influence elections. Now, these are the things the government is allowed to talk to social media companies about. Number four, government informing social media companies of threats that threaten the public safety or security of the United States. Number five, exercising permissible public government speech promoting government policies or views on matters of public concern. Number six, informing social media companies of postings intended to mislead voters about voting requirements and procedures. Number seven, informing or communicating social media companies in an effort to detect, prevent, or mitigate malicious cyber activity. And finally, number eight, communicating with social media companies about deleting, removing, suppressing, or reducing posts on social media that are not protected free speech by the Free Speech Clause of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Now, that to me is pretty broad, and all of that is commonsensical. Okay, if there's a cyber threat, you would expect that the federal government inform a social media company, hey guys, we got credible intel, we think this could be coming down, just be aware this is up, okay? If the government is aware that somebody is using a social media platform for criminal activity, okay, government contacts a social media platform, hey, I don't know if you're aware of this, cat, but we got some information here we think you guys ought to know about. Everything in this judge's ruling, as far as the 8 different things that the government can talk to social media platforms about, is reasonable, commonsensical, and allows a pretty broad latitude. The flip side of it is, anything else, any other reason, the government cannot talk to social media companies. In simpler language, if the Biden administration, or for that matter, any administration, doesn't matter who's in the executive branch, but if they've got the idea that they can go to social media companies and get them to, hey, we think you ought to take this post down. Hey, we don't like what this guy's saying. Can you flag this thing or throttle it back so he doesn't have quite the same reach, yada, yada, yada? Can you shadow ban this guy? Whatever, okay? That's now prohibited by virtue of this injunction. And I got to tell you something. When I read this thing, I went, whoo, oh, happy day, oh, happy day. Okay, we're going to stop right there because I'm too old and I'm too white to sing, and y'all don't want to hear me do it. But you can tell how happy I am about it, okay? This is something that has been needed to be done for years now, okay? And this thing is going to wind up at the U.S. Supreme Court before it's all said and done. I guarantee you that, because there is no way that the federal government, particularly the executive branch of the government of the United States, is going to let this injunction stand. And sure enough, the next day after this injunction came down, it was reported in Politico that the Biden administration intends to appeal this thing. Let me show you from the article. Biden administration is appealing a court ruling sharply limiting the ability of federal officials to interact with social media companies about the content contained on the platform. Politico. They're not limiting their ability to interact with them. They're just limiting the circumstances under which they can do it. There's a profound difference in those two things. No one's saying the feds can't talk to social media companies. No one's saying that the feds can't talk to Twitter, to Facebook, to YouTube, whoever. They're just limiting the circumstances under which you can do it to prevent the federal government from abusing or denying the right to free speech. You know, and Millicent, yeah, honey, your country down there, I feel for you, darling. I do. And I agree with you. No government should have the power to stop people from speaking their minds. Now, let me add a caveat to what I just said. If someone is lying, okay, or slandering, or engaging in defamation, okay, then all right, that's a whole different issue. Absent those things, as far as I'm concerned, you pretty much say whatever you want and let the free market of ideas have its way. You know, which goes back to a previous Front Porch Brunch that we had talking about the great debate of non-debate between Robert Kennedy Jr. and Dr. Peter Hotez. You know, Hotez says he won't go on Rogan's podcast even if he's offered $1.5 million for charity because, you know, I'm not going to engage in somebody who's spreading misinformation. Well, hey, you know, if he's spreading misinformation, why don't you go on there and debate him and, you know, prove why this is misinformation? Yet he won't do it. So that's what I mean by the free market of ideas. If something that someone says is wrong, then let the other side come forth and prove why it's wrong. Okay? Shouldn't that be the better way of doing this as opposed to having a government saying, well, we don't know that we want this idea being widely communicated because, frankly, we are of the opinion that you are engaging in misinformation and another untoward, inappropriate sort of commentary about our society here in our country. No. Let's have the debate. Let's get it on. As we say, as it says in football, strap it up and get it on, baby. Let's have at it. You know, let's do this. Now, for those of you who may not know how something like this is going to work, if they haven't done it already, the Biden administration is going to file a formal appeal. They've already filed a notice that they're going to appeal it. And this will wind up before the 5th Judicial Circuit Court of the United States. Now, I said in one of my videos this week that sometimes people get accused of going judge shopping. Well, you can make the same argument when it comes to what circuit you bring a legal action in. For example, the Ninth Circuit out on the west coast of the United States has been notorious over the years as being the place where if you want to get something judicially liberal done, you go out and you file something in the Ninth Circuit because, you know, it has the nickname the Ninth Circus. And same thing is said on the conservative side. The Fifth Circuit, based out of New Orleans, Louisiana, is arguably one of the most judicially conservative, if not the most judicially conservative circuit in the United States. Now, is the full circuit going to hold up this judge's injunction? I have no idea. But I'll tell you this much. This lawsuit that these two attorney generals have filed has gotten farther than I ever thought it would. I mean, I've seen lawsuits filed in the past 3 years that you would think that a judge would want to hear the case. Nope, we're not going to let you have discovery. Nope, we're not going to appeal it. Nope, we're not going to hear it. Nope, we're not going to talk about it. This one is going to wind up getting to the Supreme Court. And frankly, it should. Um, because honestly, and I'm sure Goodnight can speak to this one better than I can, there's been some serious, um, very serious questions over the years about what is the role of a social media platform in American society vis-a-vis the First Amendment and its free speech clause. Because there's more or less two schools of thought. One of them is, okay, it's a social media platform. People should be allowed to say what they want, provided you're not lying, slandering, or defaming. Okay? You should be able to say what you want. The other school of thought, which has more or less taken hold, is, well, these social media companies have a responsibility to stop disinformation. And they have a responsibility to make sure that the content on their platform is appropriate and we're not engaging in telling things that people shouldn't hear, yada yada yada. Basically an editorial function, almost like an editor-in-chief at a newspaper. This is why I think this needs to wind up in the hands of the Supreme Court, because that question needs to get settled. Because in the name of supposedly stopping misinformation, I think there are very legitimate examples of people who are simply trying to engage in the arena of ideas, and they can't do it because now it's reaching the point where social media companies are basically able to just say, no, you're not going to be allowed to talk about that. We deem what you say to be misinformation. So yeah, this one needs to go up to the Supreme Court. Now I'm going to watch this one because this is going to be fun. It really will. And yeah, and going back to that debate about RFK, such refusal kind of illustrates the idea that perhaps RFK is right. Maybe. I mean, he cannot get anybody on the left to debate him, which kind of goes to something else which bugs me about the era in which we find ourselves. And that is that the left, and I say the left broadly, I mean progressives, liberals, however you want to define it, they will not debate by and large. They make pronouncements about what the world is and what it should be, yet they will not try to defend their ideas. And I don't understand that. I really don't. And I don't understand that. If you have the strength of your ideas and your ideas are that strong and that provable and they make for a better society, in the traditions that I grew up in, you should be willing and able and ready to debate them anytime, any place, anywhere, and just go for it. But yet the left won't do it, which to me says either you can't defend it or you won't defend it. Neither situation is particularly good. Yeah, and yeah, Leanne, I agree. They only know the talking points. They don't have the facts or the science. I agree with you. Now, don't get me wrong. People on the right can be just as guilty of that as well. But by and large, at least, and I use this term broadly, conservatives have an intellectual basis for why they believe what they believe. Now, they may not be able to articulate that as well as they could, depending on who it is or given the situation or given the subject, but at least there's a basis for why they believe what they believe, and they're willing to talk about it. I mean, and even on the other side of that, RFK Jr. has made the statement on more than one occasion, hey, look, I'm not against having my mind changed. Prove me wrong. And I admire that about him. I mean, that's intellectual honesty. And Millicent, I think you bring up a really good point, too. Social media companies operate globally, and different countries have different communications. America's freedom of speech is at odds with the... Yeah, I agree with you. Totally. Yeah. Going back to Leanne's comment, Millicent says it's predominantly governed by feeling. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The left operates off of feelings. I feel. Well, honey, I love you, but your feelings are like, as far as I'm concerned. Wait a minute, I didn't do that right. Let me try that again. There we go. That's a good raspberry. Yeah, your feelings are nice. I'm glad you have them. They don't mean a whole lot. I'm not trying to be cruel about it. It's just, here are the facts. What you feel is one thing. What the facts are something else totally. But I want to before we totally get out of this subject, and I do want to play a couple of reactions, or at least one anyway, for sure. This is from CNN the other morning, and this one just kind of blew my mind when I heard this. I couldn't believe that. Let me clear out some things here, make this a little bit easier to get to. Yeah, here we go. This is from CNN the other day, and I think this was like, I want to say the morning, yeah, July 5th. And this is from CNN in the morning. They were talking about this ruling by the judge.
Trump appointed.
Hang on here. There we go. And I'm going to play the whole thing, and I want your guys' take on this. So the hostess is talking to this round table of people at CNN, and they go to their legal analyst. So having set that up, listen to this, and then let's talk about it. This is the reaction by folks at CNN to this injunction handed down by Judge Ted Dowdy.
Trump appointed judge, but this judge was confirmed 98-0 by the Senate. Just reading the words in this injunction, a, quote, massive effort by the defendants to suppress speech based on content, those are the judge's words, calling the present case, quote, arguably involves the most massive attack against free speech in the United States history, Ellie.
Yeah. It's a dramatic decision by this judge. If you read through it, he's citing to literature and George Washington and Ben Franklin. Here's what really is astonishing to me. This is a conservative ideology that clearly comes through in this decision. It's a conservative political ideology, right? We saw some of the quotes questioning vaccines, questioning masks, conservative talking points. But the ruling itself is the opposite of judicial conservatism. This is one of the most aggressive, far-reaching rulings you'll ever see. What this judge is purporting to do is to micromanage, really, the day-to-day interactions between essentially the entire executive branch, all these agencies that are listed as defendants, and the leading social media companies. And in the actual temporary injunction, the judge basically says, you're not allowed, administration, to talk to these social media companies about any protected free speech except for cybersecurity threats, national security threats, criminal threats. But where's the line? Who's going to police this?
Trump appointed.
Okay, hold on. All right. I got various thoughts about this. I find it fascinating that a legal analyst at CNN finds it astonishing that a judge would cite quotations from the Founding Fathers and other original documents related to the founding of the country. Shouldn't that be something a judge should be referring back to when trying to figure out what the Constitution means and how to practically apply it? Shouldn't we be looking at context? Now, the other part that just boggles my mind. Oh, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it's just, oh my God. Oh, I thought the poor man was going to have a case of the vapors and just faint right there watching this. I mean, somebody get some smelling salts for this poor guy. Jeez, this is ridiculous. Unbelievable. Hang on, there we go. Unbelievable, this guy. Unbelievable. Yeah, exactly. Freedom of speech and the First Amendment is right wing. And that's something that just boggles the mind with me. It's like, oh, you can see it's a conservative ruling. Yeah, because he's a conservative judge. And plumbers do plumbing, your point being. Water is wet, your point being. I mean, seriously, dude, what did you expect? And well, this is more than, this is not judicially conservative. This is just broad reaching. Yeah, because sometimes you got to rein in the excesses of the actions of the government. Wow. Had to throw a big lasso a long way to get this thing. I mean, and, well, they're not allowed to talk about protected free speech. Yeah, they are. There's 8 exceptions to this. All very broad, very commonsensical. If there's criminal activity, if there's non-protected free speech, yes, we're allowed to talk to you about it. I mean, those eight exceptions are broad enough that they can allow for legitimate interaction between the federal government and, and a social media company. All that the judge is saying is you cannot talk to them about censorship. And by the way, I'll give you a great example of it. Let me see if I can pull this up real fast. Hang on. Yeah, this is from Matt Taibbi. Everybody gave him hell about, oh, there's nothing in the Twitter files. It's a big nothing burger. Oh, yeah? Take a look at this. This is a direct example, and I'm going to pull it up so you can see it better here in a second, of someone in the government asking Twitter to take down a post by Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, down here is the bottom of the thread, okay? Drop down. Yeah, I'm getting used to this. Bottom of the thread. All right, check this out. And then if we can keep an eye out for tweets that fall in the same genre, that would be great. Friday, January 22nd, 2021, this Clark Humphrey sends an email, wanted to flag the below tweet, and I'm wondering if, quote, can we get moving on the process for having it removed ASAP? Look at whose name is on it. Robert Kennedy Jr. They wanted this tweet taken down. Now, I'm not sure what the subject of it was, but it's just a perfect example. And what did Twitter respond with? Thanks, we recently escalated this. So yeah, there's some legitimately good reasons why this ought to wind up at the United States Supreme Court. And if that's right wing, the left will never change my mind. I speak too much and don't have a clutch on my tongue to not. There you go, sister. I like that expression. Clutch on my tongue. Don't clutch your tongue here. No, we like unclutched tongues. Please, by all means, turn it loose, sister. That is part of what the electronic front porch is for. I want you, the viewer, to come here and speak your mind. I may not agree with you on everything, and that's fine. Perfectly fine. But you can have your say. I'm not going to try and stop you. All I ask, be kind, be courteous, don't be rude. As Keanu Thompson, don't be untoward. But yeah, have your say. We get to have our say. And at the end of it, I'll call you friend, you call me friend, and we talk about it. And I think that's a good thing. Really good thing. So it's about 10 minutes after 11 on Saturday morning, July the 8th. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. This is Front Porch Brunch. And I want to shift gears a little bit and get to, and this one dropped late last week. I think it happened on Friday. Yes, darling. And I love it when you're savage. Ooh, baby. Oh, baby. Yes, you are a savage, and I am here for it. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about something, an interview that took place last week. And to me, this is one of the best things that I think ever could have happened. Primarily in part because of who was involved. Now, most people who are watching this and will be watching it later on are well aware that Russell Brand has a live stream that he does on rumble.com on a regular basis every day. He is, and say what you want to about the man. He's gone through his own struggles. Maybe he's still struggling with some things. I don't know. But he is an absolute free speech warrior. That man will talk to anybody and he'll have a conversation with them. He's kind of like Rogan in that respect. And like a lot of people, regardless of who they are, what their status is in life, or where they are, etc., I don't think Russell Brand necessarily started out wanting to be some kind of a cultural warrior. I really don't. I mean, that's the interesting, fascinating thing to me about a lot of folks in the moderate to conservative to libertarian space. They never started out wanting to be some kind of a culture warrior. They never did. They just wanted to live their lives and express their opinions about something. I mean, occasionally you'll hear me refer to Gary Beekler, aka Nerdrotic. Has a wonderful channel on YouTube and on Rumble. Shout out to the guy. He is If you don't know his backstory, I recommend you find out because he is one cool dude. But he's made the statement on more than one occasion. He's like, look, I just want to read comic books and enjoy pop culture and have fun. I didn't expect to be in the middle of all this. And I think Russell Brand is much the same way. But Russell had Tucker Carlson on his live stream. And they had a good 2-hour interview. And when last I looked at the numbers of views for that almost 2-hour live stream, there had been like over 1 million views on Rumble. And it's probably gone up since then. Hang on a second. Let me look at something real fast. Now I'm just curious. Because I got to find this. Because I got to know. I just got to know. I'd like to find out. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, here it is. The latest number as of this morning, 1.65 million views on that interview. That is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, and I'm like you, Millicent. You know, I don't always agree with Russell Brand, but I think he's got definitely interesting things. That's kind of my take on the whole thing. You know, but he has Tucker Carlson on, and I want to play some clips from this interview because I tell you what, some of this is, I haven't seen the whole thing, but the parts I have seen are just fascinating. So the first one is a discussion of Tucker Carlson, Twitter, and Elon Musk. And I want to play this. I might stop in at various points and just interject something here. But yeah, this definitely I want to play for you. So let me pull this up. This is Russell Brand talking with Tucker Carlson, and take a listen to this, and then we'll talk about what you think.
We were all amongst us thinking, where will Tucker go? Is it going to be Tucker? Will he be joining us on Rumble? Will you set up your own thing? What was it about your conversations with Elon Musk that led you to work there on Twitter?
Well, I don't work for Elon. He's paid me zero money. I don't think I ever want to work for anyone again.
Now let me stop this right here for just 1 second, and I do that for a purpose. Notice what Tucker Carlson just said. I don't work for Twitter. Elon Musk is not paying me any money. Now, the reason that I bring up this point to highlight is that Fox News right now, or actually a couple of months ago, filed a motion to get a judge to stop Tucker Carlson from what he was doing on the grounds that he was in violation of his contract. Now, I haven't got the exact wording of the contract in front of me from the Axios article where I found it. But basically the idea that Fox was saying was, hey, by terms of his contract, he's not allowed to give his services to anyone else, yada, yada, yada. He's in violation of that. Which, technically speaking, that contract is still in effect because, keep in mind, Fox never fired Tucker Carlson. They took him off the air, but they didn't fire him. And think about that for a minute. The guy's making $20 million a year. They're paying him to sit around and do nothing. How much money does a corporation have to have that you can literally take a guy off the air, or a lady, whoever it may be, and you pay them to do nothing? That to me is astounding that you've got that kind of money sitting around. Now, remember what Tucker Carlson just said to Russell Brand. I am not working for Twitter. Elon Musk is not paying me anything. I'm not receiving any kind of salary for what I'm doing. And the reason that I bring that up is the language of Tucker Carlson's contract with Fox presupposes that he would be in violation of his contract if he were being compensated by another company or online company or social media platform for his services. Well, Tucker's not doing any of that. He just said, Elon is not paying me anything, and I'm not working for Twitter. So strictly speaking, he cannot be in violation of his contract. Hence, and I don't know if a judge has even ruled on this yet or not, but, how could he be in violation of his contract if he's not receiving compensation? I just wanted to bring that up. I thought it was an interesting point. So we'll continue with this.
Done that. I'd like to make money. I mean, I think that's fair. I've made zero money since I left, and that's fine. But at some point, I'd like to. But I'm not working for Elon Musk. He hasn't offered to hire me, and if he did, I wouldn't accept. But what he's done is offered me what he's offered every other user of Twitter, which is a chance to broadcast your views without a gatekeeper there. But I do think, I think the technology at Twitter is, my expectation, is evolving, and I think the subscription model might work or it might not. I don't know, but I think it might, and I plan to stay there. But
okay, so from the man's own mouth, I'm not working for Twitter. I'm not being paid by Elon Musk. He hasn't made an offer to me, and even if he did, I wouldn't take it. I've said in previous videos and live streams, Tucker Carlson is at a unique point in his life. I think he said during this interview he's 55 years old right now. 54 or 55, I forget which it was. And he's at a really unique point in that he doesn't need money, likes to make it. Hey, my kind of guy. Let's hear it for American capitalism. But doesn't need it. He just wants to be able to work and talk about ideas and do that. Larry says, could it be because liberals read more policy than listen to pundits? Yeah, it could be. This is why they feel what they feel. Could very well be. Yeah, it could very well be true, sir. And Larry, glad to have you here this morning, dude. And by the way, y'all do me a favor if you haven't done it already. I know that Leanne has and Millicent has. But if you're out there listening right now, if you have an account on Twitter or Getter or wherever, shoot out a quick tweet or get or whatever it is that you do, and just let people know we're here this morning. I mean, I'm not trying to, if you don't want to do it, that's fine, but, I'll take all the advertising help I can get. So do me a favor, just shoot that out real fast. I'd appreciate it. But anyway, I thought that was a really interesting comment from Tucker. Now, let's move on to the next one. And this is on the question, and Tucker dropped a bomb with this. And I really want to get into this one. This clip runs about almost a minute. Like I said, I might clip in and just give a quick commentary, but I'm going to do my best to stay out of it and let you hear this in its entirety, and then let's talk about it. This has to do with January 6th, information he was finding, etc. So that sets it up, and I'm going to play you the clip.
They immediately recoiled when you asked any questions about January 6th.
No!
And that was a tip-off to me. I mean, I had no thought in my head as I watched this happen on television.
Hang on, folks. Let me try something here.
Questions about January 6th. And that was a tip-off to me. I mean, I had no thought in my head as I watched this happen on television and in the subsequent weeks that U.S. law enforcement or military agencies had anything to do with it. That never crossed my mind. I never thought that it was a false flag or anything like that. I'm not a conspiracist by temperament. I never thought that. And then I interviewed the chief of the Capitol Police, Stephen Sund, in an interview that was never aired on Fox, by the way. I was fired before it could air.
Did you guys catch that last part? Okay, we'll continue.
I'm going to interview him again. But Stephen Sund was the totally non-political, worked for Nancy Pelosi. I mean, this was not some right-wing activist. He was the chief of the Capitol Police on January 6th. And he said, oh, yeah. That crowd was filled with federal agents. What? Yes. Well, he would know, of course, because he was in charge of security at the site. So the more time has passed, now it's been...
Okay. I'm going to back that up and just see if I can find it here. Hang on. I want to play the last about 30 seconds of that one more time and let you hear this.
Peace. Stephen Sund, in an interview that was never aired on Fox, by the way, I was fired before it could air. I'm going to interview him again. But Stephen Sund was the totally non-political, worked for Nancy Pelosi. I mean, this was not some right-wing activist. He was the chief of the Capitol Police on January 6th. And he said, oh, yeah. That crowd was filled with federal agents. What? Yes. Well, he would know, of course, because he was in charge of security at the site. So the more time has passed, now it's been...
Okay. It speaks for itself. It's almost one of those situations where I don't even need to say anything about it. But I want the import of what Tucker Carlson said to literally sink in for those watching this live or for those who are going to be watching this later. Tucker Carlson did Larry, okay, hang on, Larry. Has Tucker done a bit on the mostly peaceful boarding process for the... You know, I don't know that he has. I don't know that he has, Larry. And since he's now on Twitter, that'd be a pretty good subject to get into if he really wanted to do it. But on this clip, Tucker Carlson did an interview with the chief of the Capitol Police, who was the chief on January 6th. The interview was done while Tucker was still working at Fox. The interview never aired. Tucker Carlson was taken off the air before that interview could go up. And in that interview, the chief of the Capitol Police said the crowd in front of the Capitol on January 6th was filled full of federal agents. Now, I have any number of thoughts and questions on the basis of that statement. Number one, I have no reason to believe that Tucker Carlson's lying about that. Okay? Because frankly, if he were lying and we found out later that he were lying, his credibility would be shot to hell. Okay? So as a journalist, he's got a responsibility, if nothing else, to himself and to his own career to make sure his facts are straight on this. Number two, I could understand the argument, given the size of the crowd, why you'd want federal law enforcement in the crowd. I get that. But there is a question that I think begs to be answered. If it wasn't crowd control that they were engaged in, just what were these federal agents doing in this crowd? And I'm going to leave it right there. I've got some suspicions. Can't prove it, at least not yet, but I've got my suspicions. But that little nugget of information, oh yeah. And I hope that now that that Tucker Carlson has his Twitter interview show, for lack of a better term for it, his show on Twitter, I really hope this guy comes back for a second interview with Tucker, because this is stuff that needs to get out there. It really does. But yeah, that was a major bombshell that came out of this discussion between Tucker Carlson and Russell Brand. So that gets to some other subjects that they touched on. And one of them was Donald Trump and the impact of Donald Trump, and particularly as it relates to foreign policy questions, for example, the war in Ukraine. So I want to set this up, and Russell Brand starts this off with a question.
The establishment figures within the Democrat Party, notably RFK.
My internet loves me but doesn't love me. Hang on, folks. The white circle of death. All right, here we go.
in the Democrat Party, notably RFK?
Where am I on Trump now? What I love Trump. Personally, I mean, I made a huge mistake last November in getting involved in American politics, something I've never done before, and making calls. This guy's going to win. I think this is going to happen in this state. Meet your new governor, New York, stuff like. And I was wrong on almost every call. I'm not a very astute political analyst. I'm not interested in politics. I never have been interested in politics. I'm interested in ideas. I'm interested in people. And so there's a primary going on in the United States. But
I want to stop here for just 1 second. I think that this is probably one of the most humbly honest admissions among anybody in electronic journalism. Yeah, I'm like you, Leanne. Yeah, this surprised me too. I absolutely agree with you. And it's probably one of the most humbling admissions I think I've ever seen anybody in media give an assessment of themselves. Because we all have assumptions about people who are involved in media, particularly electronic journalism. Okay, regardless of whether they're on Fox, on CNN, on MSNBC, PBS, wherever. But that's probably one of the most humble assessments and brutally honest assessments of their own work and their own takes on things that I think I've heard anybody give in a long time. So after Tucker, self-analyzes, he gives his assessment of Trump. And I want you to hear this because this is interesting.
Between Trump and a bunch of other people, primarily Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, but others, Vivek Ramaswamy, for example. And I haven't said word one about it. Don't plan to. I think looking back on this 10 years from now, assuming we're still around, I think we're going to see Trump's emergence as the most significant thing to happen in American politics in 100 years, because he reoriented the Republican Party against the wishes of Republican leaders.
Okay, now I want to stop here for a second because this is a very valid point. And this is a fight that's been going on really since 2015 till now. And the figureheads in that fight are Donald Trump on one side and Republican leadership on the other. The Mitch McConnells, the Paul Ryans of the world, the whoever, okay, Mitt Romney, whoever you want to throw into that camp. Trump is a lot of things, but Trump is more, I would argue, pragmatically populist. He's conservative on a lot of issues. He's pragmatically moderate on others. He has a deep, abiding love of his country. I don't think anyone can dispute that. Okay? You can say what you want to about Donald Trump. But that conservatism, that pragmatic populism, puts him at odds with the leadership of his own party. And the fascinating thing, and I think Tucker's absolutely right about this, the fascinating thing is that Donald Trump has reoriented the Republican Party in spite of the leadership at the top, from people like Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney, among others, that, and maybe reorient is not the right word. Maybe it's better to say he's put it back in a more traditional place. And here's what I'm getting at. Prior to George W. Bush, and you can make an argument even prior to his dad, the Republican Party stood for non-interventionalism, a limited government. But in the area of foreign policy, we weren't going to get involved in something unless there's a direct, vital national security interest. I mean, now, along comes particularly George W. Bush, and man, we're all over the world getting into stuff. Now, some of that's in response to 9/11. I get it. That moment demanded that we do certain things that up to that point we might not have otherwise wanted to do. But the idea of nation building, which we tried to do in Iraq disastrously, which we tried to do in Afghanistan disastrously, that's not something that the Republican Party, by and large, ever would have subscribed to before the era of W. Okay? Trump has taken it back to what it was before that. So, I want to go forward now, having set that up. This gets into the question of foreign policy.
But when I think about Trump right now, so it's July of 2023, I'm struck by his foreign policy views. Trump is the only person with stature in the Republican Party, really, who's saying, wait a second, why are we supporting an endless war in Ukraine? And that, leaving aside whether Trump's going to get the nomination or get elected president or would be a good president, I can't even assess that. All I can say at this point is I'm so grateful that he has that position. He's right. And everyone in Washington's wrong. Everyone. And Trump is right on that question. And it's a big question. That war is reshaping the world. It's reshaping the economy of the world. It's reshaping populations. I was just in Romania last week, which is, of course, shares a border with Ukraine. The refugees in that region, the number of people killed in that war. Europe will never be the same because of this war. And it really matters. And Trump alone among
the establishment.
Okay. That, to me, is a fascinating exchange. Fascinating set of statements. Because I give Tucker Carlson credit. He's right. Outside of Donald Trump, name me one Republican politician that is virulently against this war in Ukraine, this proxy war that we're fighting against the Russians. I'm serious about this, and I say it with all due respect to anybody watching this live stream right now or will be watching it. Leave a comment later on. If you can name me one other politician outside of Donald Trump at the national level that is opposed to this war in Ukraine, either drop it in comment or leave it in a comment after this live stream's over with. Because on this point, Tucker Carlson is right. Donald Trump is the only person that I'm aware of that has said we've got to get out of this thing for any number of different reasons. I love thinking back to that CNN town hall when I think it was Caitlin Collins was the young lady who was moderating the town hall. And she said, well, are you pro-Ukraine or are you pro-Russia? He's like, I am pro-stopping the dying. Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah. I'll give you that. Give you that one, Leanne. I hadn't thought about it, but you're right. He is opposed to it. Good call. See, this is why I love my audience. Y'all are the smartest bunch of people on the internet. I love you guys. Mwah. But yeah, and Trump's like, I'm pro stopping the dying. And that got one of the biggest responses that whole night. Americans by and large are a peace-loving people, contrary to our political leadership that frankly is a bunch of warmongers, in my opinion. They want peace. If we have to go to war, God forbid we do it, but if we do, we're going to go in with overwhelming superiority, kick someone's ass, and try to make peace after it's done when we are the victors. But why are we fighting a war in Ukraine that's going on and on and on? It just came out on Friday that the Biden administration has approved cluster bombs for Ukraine. And Democrats are even in opposition. They're like, what are you doing? Yet more weapons, more money, on and on and on and on it goes. With no signs of slowing up. Couple of comments before we go to our next clip. Had the ability to ignite vote that mattered. This is why I got more. Yeah, absolutely. Uh-oh. What, Millicent, what are you doing? I'm sensing your future also getting your chat dragged into a smash. Jesus. Millicent, Here I am, minding my own business on the internet, just doing my little thing over here. And there you are, just stirring the pot, trying to get it going between my viewers and listeners and Mike's viewers and listeners. You wicked woman, you. I have the smartest audience on the internet. I also have one of the most wicked audiences on the internet. Some of them, anyway. No, I love you, Millicent. I'm just giving you grief. I want to follow up from this clip that Tucker had in his thoughts on Trump, and yeah, you warned me, all right. You did warn me. I want to turn to a follow-up question that Russell Brand puts to Tucker, and it has to do with RFK Jr. And that's the setup. Now I just want to go ahead and play it. And like I said, I may stop this at points I think are interesting. So hang on.
So Trump generated, I suppose, a new type of populism. He rebooted politics. He reordered the Republican Party. And but perhaps is it fair to say that, other than the significant fact that he was less militaristic significantly than other comparable presidents, at least recent presidents, I mean by that, do you think that he delivered in office? Why do you think he remains so fascinating? Do you think that the Americans, broadly speaking, that are attracted to Donald Trump are attracted by his foreign policy stance, or do you think that there's something else? And do you not think that RFK, who is my understanding, he's been on the show a couple of times, he's now on Rumble, and I find him to be a very admirable man. He similarly is vehemently anti-war, anti this conflict, and seems to also have identified the unspoken intention to be the deracination and annihilation of Russia for globalist and economic reasons, rather than the rather naive assumption that it's in any way a humanitarian conflict.
It's for democracy. That's my favorite. It's for democracy. Okay. Say to people who hate democracy. Well, I love Bobby Kennedy, and I've had him on my show many times. He announced for president on my show, which took a lot of stones on his part, given how despised I am by a lot of Democratic primary voters. I think he's a wonderful person. I'll say that. Just as a man, I admire him. I mean, he said the greatest thing any politician or any public figure's ever said to me at dinner a couple of years ago. They've gone after his family. The pharma companies and their agents in the media have really gone after his family, his siblings. They convinced a bunch of his siblings to denounce his views. So painful. And I'm so close to my family, I can't even imagine that. And I said to him, what's that like? I thought I took a lot of shit. I can't even imagine what that would be like. If my brother denounced me, I'd probably shoot myself. I couldn't handle it.
Also, if it was Buck, he would be able to provide the weapon.
Yeah. My brother's not going to denounce me. It's my best friend and wonderful man. But anyway, so I said to him, what's that like? And he said, and I'm quoting, I probably shouldn't be quoting a private conversation, but he said this to me. He said, I've got 7 children and they all love me. I don't care.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, you want to distill my values into a sentence? That's the sentence. So I really admire him. I don't agree with him on everything. I do agree with him, I'll just be honest, on most things, on the big things.
Yeah.
And so, no, I love what he's doing. I love his bravery, which is just remarkable. The amount that man has suffered for what he thinks is true, the amount of money he's lost, the friends he's lost. He's been ostracized in a way most people can't even understand because he ticked off a drug company. Really? And he's persevered, and I really admire him.
Okay. I don't know about anybody else. I'm just going to give you my take on this, for starters. I can't disagree with where Tucker Carlson is, as it relates to Bobby Kennedy Jr. I'm just like Tucker. There's some things I will not agree with Robert Kennedy on. But I say this, and I, again, wholeheartedly agree. Robert Kennedy Jr. is out there taking a stand that's costing him friends, it's costing him money, it's costing him a lot of different things, yet he keeps on doing it. And I'll tell you what, and this is just my take on it. If the Democratic Party were to actually give him the nomination to run for president, and it got down to him and Donald Trump, I don't know that Donald Trump would beat RFK Jr. Now, he might still go on to do it, but if you ask me how much certainty I have in that proposition that Trump would beat RFK Jr. in an election, I don't know that I can tell you with certainty, yeah, I think Trump would win. Now, that said, I think Robert Kennedy Jr. represents a brand of Democrat politics that, honestly, is just almost extinct. My family, just to give an example, and I think a lot of people out there watching this in the same way, they would describe themselves as old school Harry Truman, JFK Democrats. Okay? They are pro-union. They are socially conservative on a lot of issues. Maybe not everything, but mostly. They're economically moderate to conservative. Harry Truman, JFK Democrats. That is gone in the Democratic Party anymore. Absolutely gone. And it's a crying shame. There's only one other politician that I can think of off the top of my head on a national level that might still yet represent that old school brand of Democrat politics. And that's Joe Manchin of West Virginia. And I'm not saying that because he's one of my U.S. senators. But if you take Joe Manchin's policy positions, yeah, moderate, middle of the road, let's see if we can get some agreement. Let's use some common sense. Let's sit down and try and work out something. That sort of thing. Not anymore. Not the majority of Democrats. Could you see AOC and RFK Jr. working together on something? I can't. There's no way that I could see most members of the Democratic Party working with Robert Kennedy Jr. on a host of issues anymore, because it's just not there. But yeah, I really do. I mean, I like Robert Kennedy Jr. I'm like Tucker. It's just, to me, he's a very interesting fellow. So, Leanne says, I'll be voting for him in the open primary of Virginia, not because I want him as president, but yeah. And I think there's a lot of Democrats. Leanne, I think there are a lot of Democrats just like you that feel just that way. They don't want Biden. It doesn't matter whose poll you look at. 30 to 40% of Democrats do not want Joe Biden to run for re-election. That is a huge opportunity for Robert Kennedy Jr. Absolutely enormous. And if the Democratic Party weren't going out of its way to set up the primaries to screw over Bobby Kennedy Jr., and they kept the calendar the way they've always kept it up to now, and this were a fair fight, could you imagine the debate between RFK Jr. and Joe Biden on the same stage? My God, Robert Kennedy would eat... No, wait a minute. I did not call you a Democrat. Well, actually, I did, and that was a mistake. So yes, I apologize. I forgot Virginia's open primary. Leanne, I'm sorry. I love you. Oh, come on. Man, I'm getting beat up here. What the? I make one slight slip of the tongue. Oh my gosh. The women are beating up on me. Y'all ought to feel sorry for me. I'm getting beat up by the women. Okay, I'm forgiven. All right. But yeah, I'd love to see Robert Kennedy Jr. in a debate with Joe Biden. He'd tear him up. He would absolutely eat him alive. But the Democrats will never let that happen. Never. And to me, that's a crying shame. It really is. Because there are a lot of people, Democrats across this country, who are not Leanne. Be very clear about that. But they're looking for something else. And by the way, if Joe Biden goes on to become the Democratic nominee again, which he probably will, that chunk of RFK voters, I'm not saying they're all going to vote for Donald Trump if Trump's the nominee, but a big portion of them will, and it could be just like 2016 all over again. Just some food for thought. So it's 11:45, and yeah, Probably would. Probably would. So it's 11:45 on Saturday morning. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. This is Front Porch Brunch. We're talking about news items. Oh, Leanne, I am so glad you brought this up. I said I have the smartest audience on the internet. You could make an argument I have the most telepathic audience on the internet because y'all just read my mind. Let's switch gears and talk about what may be one of the most fascinatingly interesting stories that's come out this week. And it started last Sunday, as a matter of fact. Now, I haven't said a lot about this one yet for a couple of reasons. And if you're wondering what hello, Robert. Good morning, good sir. Glad to have you in the audience. Glad to have you, brother. Good to see you, my man. If y'all are wondering what I'm talking about, it is the cocaine in the White House story. Now, I haven't said a lot about this for a couple of reasons. And one of them is, the first thing was I didn't feel like I had my hands on all the facts yet. Now, what I mean by all the facts, there's a recent saying that I'm trying to apply to myself when it comes to reading, comprehending, and understanding what's going on in the news. And that is, before you start talking about it, you need to wait about 48 to 72 hours for everything to come out. And maybe not saying that quite the way it's phrased, but that's basically the effect of it. You need to wait about 48 to 72 hours after the initial reporting for all or most or all the facts to come out before you start commenting on it, because odds are, if you do it from the jump, you're going to miss something. So that said, that sets up where we go from here. Yeah, the Bongino rule. Thank you. Flagrants in the house? Oh my God! Good morning, sir. A tip of the hat to you. Good morning. Glad to see you here, sir. Glad to see you. Daggone, I gotta catch up with you and Crash sometime soon. I really do. Need to send out some feelers. Get a conversation going with you guys. But yeah, glad to have you here. Good to see you, sir. But last Sunday, it was reported that cocaine was found in a zippered white bag in White House work area. A substance testing positive for cocaine found inside the White House on Sunday was reportedly found in a work area. New York Times reported Tuesday that the substance had been found in a, quote, work area of the West Wing, and that dispatch had said the substance was found in White House library was incorrect, citing Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi. My Italian is very bad. Small amount of white powdery substance found in the White House Sunday evening. Small zippered bag, highly trafficked part of the West Wing. Unclear how long the bag was in the White House. Biden and his family were reportedly at Camp David when a uniformed Secret Service agent found the substance during a patrol around 6 p.m. on Sunday, and it set off a brief evacuation of the White House. We have a yellow bar saying cocaine, hydrochloride, according to a website that archives dispatches from police and fire departments. Okay. Now, that sets up what we were told. Well, as time went by, as you might suspect with these things, certain pieces of information started to come out. Now, the first story that we got was, well, this was probably left by somebody, on a White House tour. We do tours on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe when the president's out of town or nothing major's going on, yada, yada, yada. Left by a tourist. Okay. Well, more and more information started to come out, and I want to play you a clip from NBC News. Okay. And let me back.
Kelly, the big.
Okay. So, white powdery substance, weren't totally sure what it was. It was a highly trafficked area, might have been the White House library, maybe left by a tourist, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, and now here's the rest of the story. Doing our best all of us doing our best Paul Harvey impersonations. So this is a clip, an exchange between Andrea Mitchell of MSNBC and Kelly O'Donnell, the White House beat reporter. So listen to this.
Kelly, the big change is where this was found. And it was found, by my observation, in a much more secure place, limited access place than that West Wing reception area. It's still a frequently trafficked place, but it's down near the Situation Room, right off West Executive, down below. And normal people, average people just can't get in there, even with the entry from the Northwest Gate.
Now, let me say something. Notice what she said. Average people can't get in there. Now, say what you want to about Andrea Mitchell, but one thing is definitely true. That woman has been around D.C. for a hell of a long time. She has worked for NBC News for years. She used to cover the White House. So if anybody's going to know where and who can go where and when in the White House, it would be somebody like Andrea Mitchell. And when she says the average person could not get in this area, and she's not speaking out of her head here, okay? So now that sets up where this goes next. I want to play a little bit of Kelly O'Donnell here.
Well, let me bring you up to date with the reporting that I have. What we have learned is that there are, in fact, 2 West Wing entrances. You know that, I know that, but for the benefit of our audience. And now the investigation has progressed, and so they're saying the West Executive entrance, which, as you noted, is closer to the Situation Room and closer to the Navy Mess, where there's the facilities for food and so forth. It is also next to West Executive Drive. That's where, for example, the Vice President's vehicle is parked.
Okay. It's near the Situation Room. It's near an entrance on the backside where the Vice President herself might park. And I'm not saying anything with that. I'm just repeating what she said. And yeah, it's a high traffic area, but not just anybody can get back there. Okay? Now, that takes us to an article by John Nolte, who's one of my favorite reporters at Breitbart. And he writes the following. I love John Nolte because he has an absolute bite to the way he writes. Headline, Secret Service vet says only family could sneak cocaine into the White House. Secret Service veteran Dan Bongino says only the family of the president could sneak cocaine into the White House. Hunter Biden is the president's son, FYI. And this is from a tweet. There's absolutely zero chance anyone other than a family member brought that cocaine into the White House complex, Bongino tweeted Thursday. No chance of making it past MAG and security checkpoints. Family bypasses those. For those who don't know, an unzippered bag containing cocaine was found in the White House Sunday. Secret Service is currently investigating, which should be terribly difficult in one of the most heavily secured buildings in the world, one filled with surveillance cameras. At first, as Americans have come to expect, we were lied to about the cocaine being found in a highly trafficked part of the White House. This means anyone not named Hunter Biden could have left it there. Far-left Politico immediately rushed to the aid of the White House to loudly proclaim White House cocaine culprit unlikely to be found. And yes, they did report that article. That was their headline. But I want to read you something from Mike Lee, who's a senator from Utah. Of that highly secure entrance where, quote, just average people can't get in, Mike Lee confirmed what Bongino said, quote, I have been in and out of that entrance 1,000,000 times. It is one of the most heavily secured and constantly surveilled places on Earth, Lee tweeted. They keep detailed records on who enters and who exits and when. I find it difficult to accept that they can't figure out who put the cocaine there. Now listen to this. This entrance is used by very few people. just White House staff and people with pre-approved appointment in the West Wing. Non-staff have to go through multiple layers of security screening and can enter only after they've been vetted and approved by the Secret Service. Also, as my friend Dan Bongino just reminded me, pretty much everyone who enters the West Wing has to empty their pockets, and the Secret Service would immediately notice and stop anyone walking in with even a small bag of white powder. Folks, do you realize what Dan Bongino and Mike Lee have just said? First of all, that entrance on the backside of the White House, the western part of the West Wing, according to Mike Lee, is one of the most heavily surveilled and secure areas of the White House. You just can't go waltzing in there. Okay? According to Dan Bongino, who himself is former Secret Service, family members get to bypass the security checkpoints, okay? Because they're family of their first family, okay? Go back to Bongino's tweet here. No chance that they would make it past MAG or security checkpoints. Family bypasses those. Okay. I'm sorry. This is not just any old person walking in the White House. This is near the security, the Situation Room, one of the most secure areas in the West Wing, if not the world. And that's a great question. That's a great question, and flagrant. That's going to lead to an article I've got here from the Federalist. And boy, you got a really valid point, because I want to pull this up right now, since you sort of walked us to this one. Take a look at this. Headline: The White House that tracked down grannies after the Capitol riot wants you to believe cocaine caper has them stumped. An article by Jordan Boyd. And this is really interesting. The White House is apparently giving up on finding who is responsible for leaving an illicit drug in the executive mansion last weekend. At least that's what Politico reported based on temporary testimony of an unnamed law enforcement official. Okay, I want to go a little bit further into this article. Unless cocaine came from a member of the first family, such as Hunter Biden, who potentially resides in the White House and gets a free pass to walk in and out, finding the culprit should be an open and shut case for the, quote, excellence through talent, technology, and diversity within the Secret Service. Yet the Biden administration repeatedly showcases a lack of interest in discovering and sharing who dropped the bag and why. So what's preventing a visitor from bringing in anthrax or something that's not magnetic into the White House? One reporter queried at Wednesday's press briefing. It's a question worth asking. If the cocaine caper truly was a security breach that law enforcement officials couldn't catch at security checkpoints or on cameras, the White House cannot, in good conscience, claim that the first family is safe in the executive mansion. Instead of addressing reporters' concerns, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre emphasized that the president and the family were not at the White House during the incident. She, along with several White House leakers, also repeated the idea that the drugs were discovered in a highly traveled area where many West Wing visitors come through. Okay. No. Here's a good point. Security failures in important government buildings, including the White House, have certainly occurred in the past. When protesters walked into the Capitol on January 6th, one of the most notable breaches in recent history, the Biden administration partnered with banks, cell phone companies, and big tech to crack down, question, and arrest people. Today, with encouragement from the president himself, the Justice Biden Department is working to find and charge Americans for their presence in the Capitol in 2021. Whether the cocaine belongs to someone with a history of doing crack like Hunter, a staffer, or even White House guest, Americans deserve to know why the Biden administration suddenly doesn't care about security breaches. And I'll tell you what, Jordan Boyd has got an absolute point here. Okay, let's think about this logically for a second. We're talking about the White House. Outside of the U.S. Capitol and the Supreme Court, we're talking one of the most heavily surveillanced buildings in not just the United States, but in the world. Under constant surveillance, cameras everywhere, no angle not covered, security checkpoints, sniffing dogs, Secret Service, security agents, whatever, protecting the President of the United States and the President's family, however many individuals that consists of. So you're telling me that for all that surveillance and all those security people and all that Secret Service and dogs and whatever other measures that they use, you guys can't tell me who brought in a zipper bag of cocaine? Yet you can track down grandmas from January 6th, 2021, who just happened to wander into the Capitol. You can find them, but you can't figure out who brought in cocaine to the White House with all that technology and all those people? And let's think about the implication of that for just a moment. If you're sitting there telling me that you can't figure out who this is, then I have a question which is alluded to in this article. Is the first family safe? Is the first family really safe in the residence of the White House? If somebody can get a bag of cocaine in the White House, why can't they get anthrax? Why couldn't they get anything else? Why couldn't they get whatever to do harm to possibly the president, the president's family, the members of the White House staff, etc.? I have no idea if I will. No idea. But I'm going to play it. Let them hit me for it if they want to. Yeah, and Robert, you may be right. They probably are suppressing that video. Yeah, probably right. But I mean, seriously, if you guys can't figure out who did this, then I'm sorry. The president is not safe. And I am not trying to stir anything with that statement. It's just a logical conclusion. Now, on the other hand, if you are letting the president and the first family stay in the residence of the White House, then apparently the Secret Service must feel that the president and the first family are secure. And if they're secure, that means one of two things. Either A, you couldn't figure out who it was, but you are very reasonably assured that it's not going to happen again, which I really have a hard time buying. If it happened once, it can happen twice, which doesn't, to me, answer the question of security for the first family. Or number two, you know who did it, you just don't want to say it. And why do I have a strange feeling? Why do I have a very strange feeling that that's exactly what's going on here? And I go back to my very first statement about this. We're talking about the White House, one of the most heavily surveillanced buildings in the world, with more security than I can't even begin to imagine the levels and the layers of security and tactics, that are involved with protecting the building and the people inside. Yet for all that technology and all those people and all those protocols and all those everything else, you cannot figure out who brought in a zipper bag full of cocaine? What the hell? Seriously? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding Americans right now? I mean, Jordan Boyd from the Federalist brings up a perfectly valid point. For the past 3 years, you've been finding people and charging them for having gone into the Capitol on January 6th. You've worked with big tech, you've worked with banks, you've worked with whomever. You found all of them, but you can't find one person who brings in a zipper bag full of cocaine near the Situation Room of the White House? You expect us to buy this? Seriously? Do you think we're crazy? Do you think we're stupid? By the proof of the fact that the first family is still allowed to stay in the residence of the White House is the fact you guys have got to know who it was. You're just not saying anything. Because for you to do anything else, for you to let them stay there and not know who did this, means, in reality, God forbid, and I'm serious about this, God forbid, The first family is not secure because you can't guarantee what can and cannot get into the White House. You can't guarantee who can and cannot get into the White House, or what, God forbid, that person may or may not bring. If you can't produce with absolute certainty who did this, then how can the Secret Service in good conscience let the first family stay there? It's a perfectly logical question. Perfectly logical. Who is guilty of a crime that had not been charged and is going to make a big deal and make them fall. They just can't. Yeah, there's a distinct possibility to that one, Leanne. Very distinct possibility. And yeah, Millicent, you're right. Our government thinks we're stupid. Flagrant, saying it was too delayed to have been Hunter. I believe they knew about it, dressed Hunter down after the 4th. Okay. Hang on to that thought, Flagrant, because I found a tweet. I pulled this up. I tell you what, my audience is on fire today. Y'all are awesome. Man, I'm telling you, it's telepathy. We are totally in sync. Listen to this. Hang on a second. This is from a guy, Don Keith. He's got his own podcast, but I want you to listen to what he says here. This goes to Flagrant's point about, who could it have belonged to. Listen to this.
Let's play a game called Whose Coke Is It Anyway? Trump's former press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, stated this week that the cocaine found at the White House couldn't possibly be Hunter's because it was found 72 hours after Hunter left the White House.
Okay, now remember what he just said, folks. Now listen to this.
But the point I'd like to make about that is if the Secret Service are so incompetent they can't figure out who the drugs belong to 72 hours after they were found, then they are incompetent enough to have missed them 72 hours before they were found, which means it is very likely Hunter Biden's cocaine. And now that we know these drugs were found in an extremely secure part of the West Wing where everyone has to be scanned and go through security except for family, the choice becomes even more obvious. I mean, who else would have the balls to bring an illegal narcotic into the people's sacred house except for the guy who just got the sweetheart plea deal of a lifetime after his own laptop implicated him in some of the most heinous and egregious crimes known to man? Daddy's little angel.
I tell you, Flagrant, I tell you what, you could not have placed that comment better or timed it even better. I've had that one. Yeah. 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 Good point. Good point. I'm telling you, this story's not done yet. And I will say one other thing related to this that immediately comes to my mind, because it did go through there. Part of my brain asked the question, is it possible that this is some kind of a distraction, this story about the cocaine, to take everybody's attention away from what's going on with the Biden finances, the money from overseas, the business dealings, everything else? It's possible, but if that's the intention, then I say it's backfiring, because to me, this story is not a distraction, it's an amplifier. Okay, now here's what I'm getting at. Everybody knows this stuff is out there. If this is intended to be a distraction, it's not distracting anything, it's amplifying it. It's making people focus on how corrupt this family is. It's making people focus on the level of corruption in the government of the United States to protect this corrupt family. It's reminding everybody of why the system right now has got serious problems, that a corrupt FBI, a corrupt DOJ is protecting a corrupt group of individuals that are residing in the West Wing. Yeah, Millicent, you're absolutely right. It is. It is just sickening. It's awful. But I don't think this story is done yet. I really don't. I really don't. But man, there's more to this than meets the eye. And this so needs to be talked about. And we need to get to the bottom of this for a lot of reasons, and not just partisan reasons either. Yeah, you never know. Yeah. Yeah. Either they've got dirt on people, or they think they're so above it they'll never face consequence. And that, to me, is altogether possible, too. You may be right, Flagrant. You may absolutely be right. Oh, goodness. It's about, what time of day is it? About 12:12, and we have reached that point of the show that I call HodgePodge Stew. And HodgePodge Stew, for those of you that are watching, is kind of that group of stories or a story that maybe is not of, big time news in the eyes of some people, but it's things that definitely ought to be talked about. And I want to bring up some stuff as it relates to the movie The Sound of Freedom. Now, for those of you out there, yeah, good point, Leanne. I forgot about this quote, but you're absolutely right. Yep. Joe more or less said that. For those of you, let me adjust myself in my chair here. For those of you are familiar with the film, this is a movie that's starring Jim Caviezel, and it's based on a true story of a gentleman who worked to stop child sex trafficking. And it's from everyone who has seen it so far that I'm aware of, they say it's a great movie, inspiring. It deals with the subject matter in a tasteful but realistic sort of way. It's not anything untoward. It's not anything. You're not going to go there and be grossed out by scenes of debauchery that no one should be seeing. I don't care how old they are. I don't care their level of maturity. So it's done tastefully, but it's done powerfully. And Jim Caviezel is just a great actor. Okay, but I want you to notice some headlines, and these kind of strike me funny. This comes first one's from the UK Guardian. Look at this. Let me pull this up real fast. Sound of Freedom, the QAnon adjacent thriller seducing America. Here's another one. This is from Jezebel.com. Sound of Freedom is an anti-child trafficking fantasy fit for QAnon. This comes from Rolling Stone. Sound of Freedom is a superhero movie for dads with brain worms. The QAnon-tinged thriller about child trafficking is designed to appeal to the conscience of a conspiracy-addled boomer. Y'all notice something here? Three separate news organizations. And I could have thrown in the Washington Post because their language and their headlines just about the same. But have you noticed that QAnon. Basically, the mainstream media is poo-pooing the content of this film and its subject matter because, child trafficking, that's conspiracy theory, that's QAnon, yada, yada, yada. Why aren't we talking about this? Yeah, it's a good point. I think they do, Leanne. I think they do, and they just don't care. Yeah. Oh, I agree with you, Flagrant. You're absolutely right. This is like a whole other level of gaslighting. This is just amazing. Please ignore this dirtbag over here who's, child trafficking and taking kids against their will to other places in the world to sell them into slavery and God knows what else. Just ignore him because that's not real. Even though we have documented cases of it all around the world and in the United States. Don't talk about it. It's conspiracy. It's QAnon. It's whatever. Yet it's still going on. Still going on in the world. But the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about it. And did you notice something else? Which speaks to the power of the message of this movie and also speaks to how decrepit that Hollywood is. If I heard correctly, and I've got to look this up, if I heard correctly, this movie, The Sound of Freedom, outdid Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny on July 4th. It's not in nearly as many theaters. It's not getting nearly the advertising help that big studio movies do. And this film outdid Hollywood's latest blockbuster on July 4th. That to me is incredible. It speaks to the quality of the film. It speaks to the quality of the acting. It speaks to the message. It speaks to the content of the film, and the desire for people to talk about it. Yeah, exactly. It's mostly spread by word of mouth. I mean, most of the social media content creators that I follow, that's all I won't say it's all they're talking about, but to a man or woman, they've all gone to see this film. And they have nothing but good to say about it. I was watching Culture Casino's review of it the other night before I went to bed. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, Leanne. So I just find it interesting. I think Flagrant's got it absolutely right. This is like gaslighting on a whole other and what gets me about it, 3 independent news organizations, the UK Guardian, Jezebel.com, Rolling Stone magazine, and if I could pull up the Washington Post, the 4th one of the bunch, and they all are using almost all the same language. QAnon conspiracy. QAnon conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. You almost wonder if it's almost not conspiratorial. Did these guys get together on a conference call and go, all right, what kind of headline should we be saying about this thing? Well, I think we can call it a QAnon conspiracy. I don't think people out there will watch it after we label it with that. And yet it's still being watched by people all around this country and, where it's being shown around the world. In Millicent's neck of the woods down in Australia, it may not be. And it may not be. It may never get there. I don't know. Hope it does. But it definitely needs to be talked about. Yet in America, we ignore it, we gaslight it, we don't want to talk about it, and it just boggles. Yeah, hopefully it'll be streaming soon. I agree. Because people need to see this. They really do. You got kids, you got grandkids. Yeah, this is something you need to watch. Absolutely. Oh, yeah, they'll never show it. Be shocked if they do. Yeah, absolutely. Too close to, yeah. Yeah. How they don't care about the portion of society they inflict harm on and how they will never try to get to the bottom of it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, just amazing. Just amazing. Oh, and I just noticed something on Rumble. Vesper Vidette. Hopefully you're still watching, and if you are, glad to have you here this morning. I've been doing this live stream now for 3 months, I guess. 3 months? Yeah, glad to have you here. Glad you found us. And I saw your notification where you signed up for the channel on Rumble. Bless you. Thank you. Bless you. Thank you. Yeah. Now, this I absolutely agree with. Robert, you're absolutely right. This is a glorious time for all the frustrations that people have with social media right now, how in certain respects, certain subjects we're not allowed to talk about. This is an absolutely glorious time for individuals who have, the desire and the ability and the creativity and the want to get out there and start talking. I am probably one of the least techie people in the world. I jokingly call what I do here the tin can and string operation. And yet, I'm having fun doing it and talking to people and, hopefully I'm building something here that's going to last and be of good quality and be of good cheer to people, But now's the time to do it because the mainstream media is losing their grip. They don't have the credibility anymore. And they most certainly don't have the exclusive monopoly on the technology. It is a glorious time to be involved in social media. Frustrating, can be aggravating. Not say every day is wine and roses, but not every day is, ripple and then hanging off a pier in El Segundo either. So yeah, got that going for us, which is good. But yeah, Yeah, it does give me some hope too. I agree with that. I agree. You know, and yeah, flagrant, you're right. It will get wild next year. It's going to get wild before the end of this year, before it's all over with. But I just saw those articles about Sound of Freedom, and I just wanted to bring it up for discussion because I think it's definitely worth talking about. It just never ceases to amaze me the levels that the mainstream media will go to make sure that something is dismissed if they don't want to talk about it. Absolutely amazing. Well, anyway, it is, what is it right now? About 12:20 in the afternoon. We're going to start wrapping this thing up. Yeah, we talked about it. Talked about the very beginning of the live stream, dude. Absolutely. Oh, believe me, I am jumping for joy over this judge's order. Absolutely jumping for joy over it. Man, this could not happen in a better time. And I'm really praying, please, God, let the Fifth Circuit, uphold the judge's injunction, force this thing up to the Supreme Court. Because while that injunction is in place, we've actually got a shot, maybe, at a little bit more freedom on social media than what we've got right now. Yeah, they don't want the U.S. talking about it. Yeah, they don't want us talking about it. Agreed. But yeah, I'm going to start wrapping this thing up. Again, my name is Brian Trippett. This has been Front Porch Brunch, a review of news from the previous week. I want to thank everybody who's been here this morning, Leanne, Millicent, Robert, Flagrant. For people who are new to the live stream, Vesper, glad to have you here. We're going to keep on doing this as long as possible. I think Saturday morning brunch is, Front Porch Brunch is probably, it's got the chance to really develop into something nice. And it's like I said last week, every time I do this, it just gets a little bit better, a little smoother, a little easier. And it's a lot of fun. You guys make what I do a load of fun. Talking with you guys on a Saturday morning about things in the news, getting y'all's takes on it. I've said before, and I'll say it again, I've got the best audience on the internet. Now let's just get a whole bunch of more people over here and make it even bigger. And I'll do my best to keep on doing that. So, with that said, we'll be back with videos, and there's a few of them out there I haven't talked about yet, but I'm just kind of keeping them hush hush for the moment. So, well, thank you, sir. I genuinely appreciate that. But, we'll be back with videos next week. I'm going to try, if I can do it, to line up a guest for chatting on the porch. I've got a three ideas, and I got to reach out to some people. I've been lax in doing that, so my apologies to you, the audience. But, yeah, we'll be back. And I leave you, as always, with the words of that great American philosopher, Tom T. Hall. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's faster horses, younger lovers, older whiskey, and more money. We'll see you next week.